Hello, I am Moodida, and welcome back to Satisfactory. Nitrogen is a late game resource that is much easier to deal with than all the previous resources that have used pipes, because nitrogen is a gas. This means that you will need 0 pumps to go from the very bottom of the map all the way to the top if you like. However, that's not the best part of dealing with gases. All the gases will compress when packaged, with nitrogen gas having the best ratio of 4:1. This makes it ideal to transport by drone. Let's go through the blueprints I've made to handle this. Here we are right on the edge of the grassy fields, and right over here is the west coast. There's a nitrogen node right up here. It's quite a bit elevated, but this is what I'll use to test everything out at the end. Let's go through the blueprints. Alright, so I wanted to make them fairly small and compact. So I have this one, which is loading the nitrogen, and then an almost identical one to unload the nitrogen. So I'll go through both, but they are very similar. So I built these with the Mark III designer. I wasn't really sure quite how big I wanted to make these, but looking at the dimensions, I think this is small enough to fit into a Mark II. So let me just recreate this for you. So the Mark III is big enough that you could fit 2 drone ports together, so if you wanted to double this up, you definitely could. In the Mark II, we're only going to be able to do 1, so I'm just going to go ahead and center this. We'll get it all the way to the very edge. And now let's go ahead and start with some walls. So we're going to zoop these all the way across. These ones are going to go here and here. We'll do the same thing on the other side. And I'll just use the inverted ramp walls to kind of finish off the corners. And for the front, I just went with something really basic. So I just have a stripe of windows down the middle. You can go with whatever windows you like. So for the loading blueprint, the door is on this side. For the unloading blueprint, I have it on the other side, and that'll make a little bit more sense in a second. This one is going to go here, because that'll be exactly even with the rest of the drone port. So I want that to be there, which leaves just this room for the packager. And I want to spin this around, which works out great because these aren't exactly symmetrical. And the input is on this side. And if you look at the drone port, there's the output, there's the input. So if this is the loading blueprint, this is going to spit out empty canisters, and this is where we're going to load the packaged nitrogen. If I get this lined up right in the middle of the output, if I go back 2 meters, and I can go ahead and place the packager, that should give me about as close as you can get and get a right angle. So let's work with the loading side. So we are going to do packaged nitrogen gas. So this is where it gets really cool. Like I mentioned, it gets compressed at a 4:1 ratio. So 240 nitrogen gas will become 60 packaged nitrogen gas, which is already really cool. But probably the best part is if you throw 3 power shards into here and you crank this up to 250%, you only need 1 packager to deal with a completely full Mark II pipe. And then going from 600 down to only 150 of it being packaged makes it really easy to transport by drone. So for the inputs, we need empty fluid tanks. So that's going to get plugged into here. And then this is why the doors are set up differently, is because on this side, now I want... okay. Alright, so this is actually why I built it in Mark III, is I personally would much prefer to have as much of the blueprint done as possible. And so I wanted the pipeline wall hole in the blueprint, because then I can connect this pipe, and then all I have to do is on the outside is place this near my nitrogen node and then just connect the pipe to it. Just super easy. I love it. However, for whatever reason, you can't place these right on the edge of the blueprint designer. And so for the Mark II design, I'm going to have to leave them out. And I wanted these to be easily tileable next to each other. And so I don't want to put it on the side. So I'll share 2 versions of each of these blueprints. One that has the pipe and it needs a Mark III blueprint designer, and then there will also be this version that doesn't have the pipe connection included, but it does fit in a Mark II blueprint designer. And like always, those are available for free on my Google Drive. Alright, so if we place this here, it kind of cuts off the top, which I mean, if you're fine with, then by all means go for it. I personally am just not crazy about that. and that's why it has an extra 1 meter wall. Now if I snap it to this, plenty of clearance. And then let's go ahead and just grab some more windows and keep it uniform, add an extra wall there. Now to finish the inside, I guess I need another set of walls. So easiest thing I think is just to clip it a little bit through the machine right here to get that wall in place, and then you could keep it there. I'd rather just delete them. All right, so we've gotten the input, so we'll have to manually place the pipe to get the nitrogen gas in here with this blueprint. Well, that's super easy. And now as far as the output, we've got 150 if we're gonna fully overclock this, and we send that right back into the drone port. This is one of the great things about drones, is they can easily deal with both ingoing and outgoing. Unlike trains where you can only use one or the other, the drone ports are just absolutely perfect for doing this sort of a looped system. Editor Moo here. Just real quickly want to explain why this happens. The reason it can handle a loop system so well is a drone won't leave its drone port until it's completely emptied its cargo. So if it has to sit there and wait for your machines to use up what it just brought, then it's just going to sit there for as long as it takes until it can drop off all 9 or however much it was carrying, and then it will be able to pick up however many stacks up to 9 that are available for the outgoing trip. Now back to the video. All right, and as far as the fuel goes, one of the 2 drone ports needs to be fueled. So it's either your outpost, the one by the nitrogen, needs to be getting fuel, or vice versa, which is almost always what I go with. The unloading side is almost always at the factory, and I'll probably have other drone ports there. So it's usually easier for me to fuel all of the drones at the factory instead of worrying about it at any of my outposts. So on the loading side, I usually just don't worry about it. And then as far as the power goes, all I did was run up the metal beam. I'm gonna go up to 14 meters. Because that will run it right in front of the power connection. Drag that down, we can get our beam connectors here. And then I just like to throw a little sign in the middle, just to give it a little bit extra light. And the lights are actually a really great kind of extra indicator, so I can use this to just kind of match whatever color pattern that I'm going for the specific spot, or I can use it to signify something. So one of the things you could do is say, like at this node, these are all peer nodes and there's a whole bunch of them, but maybe I only need 1 or 2 for the current project, but I might as well just set everything up so I don't have to deal with it later. What I can do is I can place all my drone ports, get them all hooked up, and then change the ones that aren't being used to a different color, like red or something like that. And that way when I come back, I can easily see which ones are available and which ones I can go ahead and just use. And then with the rest, I just went with a black and white color scheme. And then with the patterns, I just used the half factory zone to give it that look. And there you go. A nice, simple, and easy drone port blueprint that can package all of your nitrogen gas. Just trying to make it easy to differentiate the 2. The ones that fit in the Blueprint Designer Mark II will have the Mark II at the very beginning of the name. So this is the packager drone for loading. And if we take a look at the unload blueprint, there's not a whole lot changed. All right, so on the inside, it looks very similar. So we've got the outgoing going right into the input of the packager. The difference is the pipe here. So if we look at the recipe, now we've got the opposite. So this is doing the unpackaged side. So we'll take that same 150 packaged nitrogen that the other packager is producing, and we'll turn it back into 600 nitrogen gas, and we'll get our 150 empty fluid tanks back. Those empty fluid tanks will just go right back into the input of the drone port and get sent back to the other one. The beautiful cycle of an empty fluid tank. And then for the fuel, I just have these stacked 3 high with a lift going into them. And then with it being in this spot right here, that will line up with the side of the 2 or the 3. The 1 is probably not going to work, at least on this side. Yeah, it's going to be too close. But if you switch it to a 2 or a 3, it'll be directly in line with this port right here, and you can easily just string as many of these drone ports together to fuel them if you need to. Other than that, it's pretty much the same blueprint. You just have to move the pipe from being an input to an output, and the recipe changes. So I could have just kept it as one blueprint and made those changes, but I think it's easier just having everything set the way you want it. And so I'll make a second version of this one as well that will also fit in the Mark II Blueprinter. So if you don't have the Mark III unlocked yet, no worries, you can still use these ones. And I'm sure you'll be able to make it look much better than I can. It's always nice to see these sorts of things in action, so let me throw a test together real quickly. Alright, let's give this a test. So I decided I would test both just a straight 300 pipe and then combining the two 300 pipes into a 600 pipe. So if we take a look at the map, we are right here. These are going to go all the way to the other corner of the map. I figure this is about as far of a trip as I could go. And we'll see how it works out. Alright, so let's get it started. And to kickstart these things, what I like to do is just come over to the drone port. Now, you do need to have some empty fluid tanks. I'm making some in my home factory, and because I'm at the late game and I have plenty of Mercer spheres, I added 2-dimensional storage to the empty fluid tank so that I can refill 480 a minute. And that way I can grab 5 stacks of them, and then in, just over a minute, I've got another 5 stacks. It's not the quickest thing in the world, but it beats having to go back every single time. So on the pickup side of things, I'm going to have the fluid tanks as the incoming piece. And the outgoing is going to be the packaged nitrogen gas. So let me go ahead and just load up all of these. And then when you place them next to each other, I usually just place them and then go back and just delete the walls. Now with the trip this far, chances are I'm going to need a few more empty fluid tanks, especially on the 600 side. And here we are at the drop-off. And if we take a look at the drone ports, we've got the 300 nitrogen gas drop-off. So if we go to this port, this is going to go to, and we should be able to type in the name, 300 nitrogen pickup. Perfect. And then with this one, we can go ahead and search for the 600. In my world, I'm using packaged rocket fuel to fuel my drones, and so that's what I'm just going to use here. And since they have fuel, as soon as we drop down some drones, these are going to take off and go get me some nitrogen gas. And then we'll just fill up these for right now, just to kind of see the whole thing run. Well, that's not what I was expecting. Suddenly they appear again. Let's take a look. So now we've got a bunch of packaged nitrogen gas, and the packagers are just working away. But we're getting a steady 598 fill rate, which is pretty close to 600. And of course, on the other side, we've got 301 for the 300. So, pipes are fun like that. All right, so I've been letting this run for a few more minutes. And on the side that's doing the 300 nitrogen gas, no problem. Even at this crazy distance, there is just no problem transporting this much. When we look at the 600 though, I am about to run out and the drone is just now landing. So I think this is about accurate, 97%, because yeah, we ran out just before this was actually able to drop off more. All right, so if we look at the drone port, yeah, we can see 144 is what the transfer rate is at this distance. If we take a look at the distance, it's pretty far. Going 6,700 meters is probably farther than you're gonna have nitrogen go 9 times out of 10. But I was kind of hoping I would run into this problem just to show you. Now this drone port already has a drone assigned to it, so I can't work with this one. But if we come back to the loading side, these drone ports don't have any drones associated to them yet. So what I can do is just pull up my 600 nitrogen and we'll assign this to the same port. So it'll show you the relevant ports. That one is coming here. So now we're going to send this one to that one. Now, since this drone just got here, I've got to wait for it to finish its animation. And then I can add another drone. Okay, now I can add another drone. And this one is just going to sit there. So we pull up the drone port, insufficient fuel because the fuel is all being supplied at the other drone port, which isn't a problem. We do, however, have to fuel this initially. So all I need to do is just grab some, and then what you can do is you can just take the rest of it out. The way the drone works is it takes as much fuel as it needs to complete its round trip. Now when it gets to the other drone port, it's going to see that there's fuel in that one available. So what it's going to do is grab enough fuel to make the round trip from that drone port back to it. And then it's basically just going to keep getting refueled at the farther drone port. So you just need to fuel it once. And then the drones are smart enough to figure out fuel as long as one of the two have it consistently. And now with 2 drones running, there's going to be 0 issue transporting 600 nitrogen gas. And the large majority of the time, I think you'll only need the 1 drone if you're using rocket fuel. If you're using normal fuel or turbo fuel, you may need more, who knows. That is going to do it for this one. I hope this helped in some way, either inspired you to start using drones for nitrogen gas or to create some more fun blueprints of your own. As I mentioned before, these ones are available on my Google Drive. The link will either be in the description or pinned in the comments. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, or requests, please leave them down in the comments. I'll look forward to those, and thanks for watching.